So you get a sense when we talk about rights, what are meant by rights, much more broadly than you may comprehend them or may have thought about them. And yet, if the power is not structured properly, if it's not an emphasis on positive power but negative power, you'll have no rights. Rights will be destroyed. So remember my equation. Liberty without rights, there is no liberty. Rights without power, there are no rights. Hillsdale College President Dr. Larry Arnn explains that each individual is born with unalienable rights. Individuals come together to form peoples, that is a civil society, and each people has a natural standing to a separate and equal station. No man may be governed except for his consent. No people may be governed except for its consent. Therefore, I point out, positive power is the outgrowth of natural rights, as I explained in Chapter 2. And in America, that positive power is incorporated within our constitutional construct. The connection between the Declaration and the Constitution is incontrovertible. Consequently, when members of the ruling class besmirch and degrade the Constitution they swore to uphold for their own aggrandizement or ideological designs, they are in fact intent on diminishing, if not eradicating, the rights of the people and their consensual role in the government. That is the entire purpose of America's founding. Again, there's no escaping that this is the project mostly of the Democrat Party, their media surrogates, and like-minded ideologues in academia and entertainment. Let me emphasize, the framers themselves understood that the Constitution might need adjustment on occasion, and in Article 5 they provided the two processes for amending it. I again turn to Marxism, which, despite its various versions, provides the greatest, albeit not exclusive, threat to the American experiment. In fact, Marx directly and often denounced natural law and individual liberty, our Declaration of Independence, as all would-be autocrats must. For example, I went back to the Communist Manifesto and I dug through it. Marx stated this: the selfish misconceptions that induce you to transform into eternal laws of nature and of reason. So he's rejecting the Declaration, and he's rejecting what else? The Enlightenment. The Enlightenment. The selfish misconceptions that induce you to transform into eternal laws of nature and of reason. The social forms springing from your present mode of production and form of property. Historical relations that rise and disappear in the progress of production. The misconception you share with every ruling class that has preceded you. What you see clearly in the case of ancient property, he's talking about going way back, agrarian times, then feudal times, and now capitalism. He says, one poison and cancer built on top of the next, and you got to wipe it all out and start anew. Start anew. What you admit in the case of feudal property, you are, of course, forbidden to admit it in the case of your own bourgeois form of government. He's saying there is, you can call it whatever you want, but the truth is it's all about feudalism. You own the land, and you basically own the people who work the land. By now, this should be familiar, I write, not only because of the earlier discussion of Marxism, but the earlier highlights from Woodrow Wilson's writings, where he condemned the Declaration as antiquated and the Constitution as both antiquated and a barrier to modernity and progress. For Marx and his progeny, the idea of individual rights is the problem. It is, he argues, intended to keep the individuals as islands unto themselves, disconnected and isolated from each other. Each jealously guards their own interests, including property, and sees others as adversaries and antagonists, rather than a part of a society of a social being. This produces a dehumanized and hollow man, he argued, remarkable considering what we know about Marxism's unspeakable inhumanity. For the broader society, Marx contends that capitalism produces neither liberty nor equality, but rather inequality and self-centeredness. To be truly liberated, the individual must go through not only a political transformation, but a social revolution. That is, cutting all social bonds to religion and even family, destroying the existing society and remaking human beings, everything they have been taught, experienced, and think. After all, he alleges, the bourgeoisie control all aspects and nature of the political and societal arrangements that spring from capitalism. Therefore, every bit of it must be eradicated. And I close again by quoting from the Communist Manifesto. Listen to this. He says, abolition of the family, even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. It is completely developed form. This family exists only among the bourgeoisie, but the state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians and in public prostitution. He's attacking the family. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. All familiar relations need to go. Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime we plead guilty. But you say we destroy the most hollow of relations when we replace home education by social. Remember, back then there really wasn't government education, schools, public schools, that sort of thing for the masses. It was home education. And one of the things Marx argued for, and one of the things Stalin did right away, they created what? Government schools. The whole notion of government schools really comes out of this. And your education, he says, is not that also social and determined by the social conditions under which you educate, by the intervention, direct or indirect, of society, by means of schools? The communists have not invented the intervention of society in education. They do but seek to alter the character of that intervention and to rescue education from the influence of the ruling class. The bourgeoisie claptrap about the family and education, about the hallowed correlation of parents and child, becomes all the more disgusting. The more, by the action of modern industry, all the family ties among the proletarians are torn asunder and their children transformed into simple articles of commerce and instruments of labor. This is why the public school teachers' unions come between the parents and the children, because they buy into this. The power to destroy not just a government, but the deep and broad roots of an entire society. Faith, values, beliefs, family, friendships, other relationships, professions, etc. And extinguish the knowledge, learning, and lifestyles, habits, and ties between fellow human beings and of human existence predictably requires not just a revolution, but a horrifically violent social and societal convulsion, followed by unending and unbounded acts of genocide and psychotic tyranny, which eventually consumes itself. Hence my discussion earlier in the book about the Soviet Union and China. Indeed, not a single Marxist regime has ever or will ever shake off its despotism or despots for the supposed final stage of societal development. As Friedrich Engels, partner with Marx, as he put it, the state withers away. The interference, he wrote, of the state power in social relations becomes superfluous in one sphere after another and then ceases of itself. The government of persons is replaced by the administration of things and the direction of the process of production. The state is not abolished, it withers away. All this human stuff. Now we have an organized theory, ideology, around which humankind must obey and must be organized. The Marxist utopian state and most other autocratic utopian states or states of utopia promised by power-hungry masterminds and revolutionaries is, if you think about it, complete nonsense. Marx's writings, along with his partner Engels, are dripping with arrogance and anger, as well as absolute certainty and pomposity. Even a cursory examination of Marxism's application in one country and society after another proves it to be nothing more than an elaborate maze of absurdities and distortions about humanity, the impossibility of which has resulted in the misery and death of tens of millions. So you get a sense, when we talk about rights, what are meant by rights, much more broadly than you may comprehend them or may have thought about them. And yet, if the power is not structured properly, if it's not an emphasis on positive power but negative power, you'll have no rights. Rights will be destroyed. So remember my equation. Liberty without rights, there is no liberty. Rights without power, there are no rights.
For all this and much more, sign up for LevinTV.